Is TrackIR worth it? By the end of this video, you'll know the ins and outs of TrackIR and whether it's for you, because it's not for everyone and it's definitely not for every setup. At the end of the video, I'll also touch on why I think the standard track clip is actually better than the track clip Pro. I'll touch on why Track Clip Pro is actually better than the track clip. Let's start off with a quick overview of what TrackIR is. TrackIR is a small head tracking device, kind of like this just here. Not kind of like it, it's actually it. So this is TrackIR. TrackIR is a small head tracking device that will take your head movements and replicate them inside the sim. This gives you the advantage of being able to look around inside the cockpit and outside of the plane. It's kind of like a halfway house between flat screens and VR. It's super useful because you'll get much better situational awareness and more of a feeling that you're kind of like inside the sim. It's another layer of immersion, and really that's what most of us are chasing. There are a few more options these days like the Tobii eye tracker, and let's face it, TrackIR is quite expensive, coming in at around $250 US. Now, before you run out and purchase one of these, you need to be aware that the internet is flooded with cheap Chinese copies. So be careful, they're sneaky about the way they do this, and sometimes it can be actually hard to tell the difference. So let's look at the design and build. It's made of this glossy plastic material, and it's quite small. It's a pretty strong magnet in which the sensor attaches to the clip, and you'll use that to attach to your monitor. The actual design of the clip, well, it's just a bit frustrating to use, but really you're only going to have to adjust this once. Once you've got it set, you know, it's just set and forget. Aside from the mounted unit, you'll need to wear either one of these. That's the Track Clip Pro and the Track Clip. Basically, the Track Clip Pro mounts to your headphone band. There's no other way to mount it, and it has to connect to your PC via this very thin and flimsy wire, and I reckon it's definitely going to break at some point. Or you can use the standard track clip. Just clip it to the visor or a cap and you're good to go. The software is pretty intuitive to use. It's full of profiles and easy to calibrate and adjust. I'm not going to go through the software fully in this video, so I'll just say that it's easy to understand and use. However, my personal experience is a little buggy at times, and there doesn't seem to be much support with updates. It might even be something I'm doing, so let me know in the comments if you've ever had Track IR5 and had any of these little software bugs. I think one that springs to mind is sometimes I'll have the software and it will just change into a different profile, and I'll be mid-flight in DCS, and let's say it flicks back to default, and that happens quite a lot. But apart from that, you know, it's pretty good. So what simulation benefits the most from TrackIR? You've got the likes of DCS, IL2, Flight Simulator and X-Plane, all the major players. There are a lot more, including racing games and FPS games, but we're going to concentrate on a flight sim here. Let's start with DCS. DCS is probably the best reason to buy TrackIR. It really shines with the sim. Being able to look up into the sky or down around the side of your plane, it gives you so much more situational awareness. You'll spot enemies, be more aware of teammates, and pick out those ground targets much easier, and it feels really natural. If you're on DCS as a main flight sim, then TrackIR, in my opinion, is highly recommended. Regardless of the high price or whether you run single or triple screens, the value add here is as good as it gets. And it's the same for any combat flight sim. Now let's say you're running Microsoft Flight Simulator or X-Plane. The benefits of TrackIR are still kind of the same, though the range of those benefits is a little more limited. You're not dependent on looking above or behind you for potential threats in Flight Simulator. You'll probably be using it more for spotting landing strips in airports, or looking down or up at your control systems at a much slower pace. Don't get me wrong, Microsoft Flight Simulator works great with TrackIR, and if you're flying with a full clickable cockpit on a single or triple monitor, then it's perfect. If you're not flying using the clickable cockpit and have a triple monitor setup like the one I have here, well, I don't even use TrackIR for this. I just stick with the standard triple screens. It's a different story though if I was on a single monitor, and this goes for X-Plane too. Single monitor users will gain a nice amount of spatial awareness using TrackIR. So let's talk about the downsides. As much as I love TrackIR and wouldn't be without it, there are some drawbacks that not many people seem to talk about. 1, it's using system resources. Not much, but enough for it to be a point. 2, when you move your head to look left or right, or up and down in the cockpit, the screen moves, obviously, but this means that if you've set up your controls like a yoke that line up, like it would line up with the sim, so your yoke lines up with the yoke inside the sim, then you actually get this kind of tearaway effect. Now, it can take some getting used to. I've gotten over it with DCS, so look, I don't have any issues with that anymore, but you will initially notice this. And I've actually avoided having my Track IR set too aggressively, just so the effect isn't so pronounced. Number 3. Now, I touched on this a little bit earlier, and I haven't heard this anywhere else, but I often have minor issues with the software. I have a few different profiles that I run with different games, and I often find TrackIR returning to a default profile, sometimes during a session. In my opinion, the software needs a little bit of work, and I don't see it getting updated all that often. Number 4, the expense. It's pretty expensive. There are some cheaper alternatives that I've tried, but I don't really have that much experience with them. But this isn't a comparison video, so that's for another time. Let's leave it at the value is there if you're playing the right sims with a setup that can benefit. Now, I did say I was going to mention the Track Clip versus Track Clip Pro. Track Clip Pro. Now, I've heard this question a few times. People just want to know what the actual benefits are. Now, the Track Clip is a small lightweight clip that clips onto your visor, whereas the Track Clip Pro, while also being lightweight, clips to your headphones but needs USB power. This of course means you'll be stuck with an extra cable running from the back of your Track Clip Pro. Now, they market the Track Clip Pro as being more accurate, and it might be, but I can't tell the difference. I really can't. If there is a difference there, it's extremely minute, and to be honest, not worth the extra hassle of having that wire connected to my wireless headphones. In my opinion, the standard track clip that attaches to my hat visor beats out the Track Clip Pro every single time. Firstly, for sheer convenience, being that there's no wires, and secondly, the difference in accuracy, to me, it just isn't there. My advice is to use a standard track clip and just be wire free. So let's talk about the other options. There are a few other options you need to consider. Besides a whole load of DIY options, which can be extremely good value considering the price of the Track Clip IR5. One of the most interesting ones, and probably a direct competitor, is going to be the Tobii eye tracker. I tried it just briefly and it kind of does compare, but it actually does a few extra things like eye tracking as well as head tracking, but I just didn't get enough time with it to give you any sort of like balanced representation. Maybe I'll get hold of one soon for a full review and comparison video, who knows. So Track IR5, would I be without it? I think that's the biggest question, and the answer to that is no. I definitely would not. This is simply because of DCS and IL2. If you play DCS or any combat flight sim, then TrackIR is an absolute no-brainer. With Flight Simulator or X-Plane, the benefits are there, but definitely not as pronounced. So it's a little bit of a harder sell. Regardless of what sim you're playing though, if you place immersion high up on the list and have the spare cash, then it's a solid buy, but I wouldn't be selling my cat for it, actually. I don't even have a cat.